Good morning. It is July 4th where I live, and this light is rather large. Let me see what I can do here for you. Okay, this way you can see the nice window. The window works well. Wait, it's the wrong way. It's going to have to hang on. I'm going to change the light. The great thing about my windows is that they don't glare when we're making these videos. The bad thing about them is that they don't let any actual sunlight in either, because they have the silver filters on them that are required in Texas now. And it's a major bummer because you can see out, so it's pleasant for you, but I don't get any vitamin D out of them. So that's a bummer. So today, it is July 4th. That means it's Independence Day in the United States. And I have a bunch of cabbages. I've already made some of them. I made them yesterday, but since they're coming along nicely, I thought I'd show you what they look like when they're in their fermenting space. And then we're going to make a few more because I have 2 Napa cabbages here as well. Just ignore this, alien level of fluorescent light above. So first, what I've got is my big pail. Some people do this in the crock pot. You can do that too. If you don't have a big restaurant-sized pail, I only have one, but it's so great. I've cut my cabbage into, because I want to take some of the core out. I'm actually going to chop it separately. I'm going to keep it in there. Some people don't put it in there, and that's fine. But it's perfectly edible, and especially as it breaks down, you're going to have a very edible product because you're just going to slice it anyway. So it looks like that. And what we're going to do here is, I'll take this other core out. I'm going to show you what we are going to end up with. What I also have here, already cut up. Actually, I think I'll try to turn that other light off. Usually I put it on for our videos, but it seems like it's kind of making some trouble. Oh yeah, that's a lot nicer. Okay, so we've got this cabbage. This is actually Napa cabbage. It's about, it's one real large one or maybe 2 small ones. It's a little bit over 1 medium one because I had 2, and this is what one of them looked like inside. It's incredibly creepy, super gross. So I'll have to call my produce manager about that. But what we're going to do is I've made it 2 different ways so you can see what it does 2 different ways. And then we're going to do a 3rd way. So I'll show you what I have so far. This one I processed in the food processor. And it looks like this now. It's very grainy. It's almost powdery. It almost reminds you of like if you get a big jar of garlic that's already chopped up. It's kind of like that. It went down in real small pieces. And it's hard to avoid that in a normal size food processor. And the reason is because in that food processor chute, you do have to slice the cabbage up just to get it in there, right? To get it into that size. But then it takes it down, and just the way that the geometry works out, it doesn't end up always in little slices. It ends up in teeny tiny slices, if a slice at all. So I'll show you what we've got here. I'm going to take it apart for a second and show you how we did it. The recipes that I used for reference, I saw one in the Pioneer Woman in the kitchen, and a few others. The thing is, you can have a gram. I have a gram scale, but not a pound scale right now, or an ounce scale. They're generally quite different things. And if you get a gram scale that will go up real high, it'll probably be a little wrong. But if you get a pound scale that will do grams, it's going to be really, really wrong. So most people don't have both. I happen to have a gram scale because I have to split up medication occasionally. And I have to figure out like how many grams are in there to put a certain amount of water in it so I can form a suspension to take it real small amounts over time. So, but this is how we did this one. So this is still kind of on the greener side today, but all that green will disappear because as the fermentation happens and the acid forms, it tastes like a little vinegar. it's going to pull that chlorophyll out and kill that off on the side of the road. So that's not what you get out of a fermented product. If you want chlorophyll, you need to like eat it fresh. So what I have in here too, see if I can show you. You can see I've got a little thing in here, and all it is, honestly, is my hands are clean, is a little thing from my my juice bottle. It's a little bottle cap. It's just enough to weigh it down a little bit, and then I have some about 6 ounces of water mixed with about half a teaspoon or so, maybe a little more, 3/4 of a teaspoon of pink salt. The problem with some of the recipes is they're using kosher salt and they don't give you a conversion standard. And I happen to know, because I've been in that business, that those numbers are not the same at all. Table salt is generally about half the amount. You use about half the amount versus the amount of kosher salt you would use, because kosher salt has high volume, low sodium content. But I use pink salt at my house, which is now a problem because there's a bunch of lead that's being found in it. But it is the most nutritive salt, and it's the only one that doesn't have mercury in it, which I need because I have a lot of mercury poisoning, and it's a whole thing. So, but pink salt comes from old oceans that don't exist anymore. And so there's no petroleum, runoff, any kind of, there's no nuclear waste in it. There's no petroleum runoff products in it because it's not an active ocean. It's now like mountains and stuff. But they mine that, and apparently in their mining processes, they're using really, dodgy materials to get it out. And so now it has lead in it. So that's not exciting at all. The recommendation generally when you are looking at these recipes is they're going to say, if your cabbage comes all the way up and it doesn't quite submerge in the liquid that you have, just add some of this saline solution that I just mentioned. Basically, they say 8 ounces of water to 1 teaspoon of salt, which I guess is exactly what I did in my way, but I didn't want to. You can't overfill that jar at 8 ounces and get salt in there. So I did that, but because this is in such teeny tiny bits, it's still floating up. So I put the jar lid on it as well, and that is pressing it in pretty good so far. And then you're going to put this on top of it, because this is a smallmouth quart jar. And this was one cabbage, by the way, one cabbage about this size. I would call this a small on the way to medium size cabbage. You've got about 6 inches from top to bottom and about 5 inches width-wise. So I'm going to put this on top. That pretty much covers it. There's not a lot that can get out, honestly, at that point. If you wanted to let a little bit more out, you could do it another way. I don't have the right one. Must have used it. What I was going to say is you could use a wide mouth cup jar and put it like this, and you still have a little bit of space for that air to get out. But all we're going to do here is just kind of put this back on. You want it to have a little bit of option to get some airflow in there, because over time it's going to develop some fermentees. And then if it develops any scum on it, you can pull that off. If it develops any mold on it, you can pull that off. But otherwise, you just want to give it a little space to breathe. So that's going to be that one. In that one, I also put some fresh ground coriander powder. Remember, it's already got all the salt in it. That's what's fermenting it. So you can't really use this if you're on a super low salt or no salt diet. That's why I haven't made it before, because I've been on a very, very low sodium diet for a long time now. It really helps with my mitochondrial integrity in Wi-Fi spaces. Wi-Fi destroys my mitochondria in the exact same way over sodium does. But now I'm not having to watch my sodium as bad, since I'm out here in lower radiation country. So, I mean, it's only taken 3 years, right? 2.5 years. But I'm finally to a point where I can kind of have some salt again and have a little wiggle room. For fermentation, that's especially nice because that's what you really need to ferment. I've asked lots of fermenting experts, what can I use instead of salt? And they're just like, I got nothing. Okay, so here's the second kind. I just put this one together. So this is a brand new one, but the reason it looks brown is because it has ginger in it. So this is a little bit more of a kimchi style, although there's no peppers in it, but there is paprika powder, a little bit, not like a lot, but a little bit. And you can see that juice is already up at the top. What I've weighed this one down with, and I would really recommend this, it's way easier. Some of the recipes say go find some rocks in the yard and clean them up and all these things. You have rice in your house or beans or something. You have some heavy hard good in your house. Muesli, oats, you got something. I have a lot of stuff. So I put this brown sushi rice in a plastic bag, and it's not going under heat or anything, so I'm not super worried about the plastic losing integrity. But it's just going to go in here, and if it does happen to leak, it's in a freezer bag. Those are very thick. They tend to last a long time. But if it does happen to leak, it's brown sushi rice. It'll go good with that sauce that's in there. It'll be fine. So I put that in there, and I wondered if it would go all the way around, and it really doesn't. It doesn't do a full seal for you. However, you don't want a full seal because you're not trying to airtight it. And it does keep the cabbage all the way under. And your goal there is really just to keep the cabbage submerged so it can ferment. If it gets into the air, then you get into the moldies. And so that's what you want to not do. If it does get in the moldy, you just take that bit out and keep going, and it's fine. I will say the other thing the recipes tell you to do is to pound and pound and pound. Well, the fact is I can't pound stuff anymore. I have this thing here. They say you can do it with like a cabbage mallet or something because we all have those, right? But you might have a potato masher, and this is a really particularly shitty potato masher because you can see the holes are so small it can't really crush a potato, but it is good for this. So I used this in this container or your crock pot or whatever you use, and just smash it down. So I started yesterday, for example, with a good 4 quarts, okay? And then I smashed it down. It got to about 3. And then I left it with just a cookie sheet on top so there was no air or bugs getting to it. And then I came back several hours later. I pounded it again, got it to around 2 quarts, pounded it again last night before bed, got it down some more. You can see it's still, it's about 1.5 quarts is what it's going to end up making because this jar that I showed you is a 2 quart jar. So that is to say that as a disabled person, you might be able to make this. Okay, so you can use the food processor if you need to, but you still do have to do some cutting. And to be honest, if I had it to do over again, putting it in the slicer with that teeny tiny grain I ended up with, I may as well have just chopped it up and just put it straight in the food processor and just pulsed it. I think I'll do that next time if I use the food processor. So, but for people who are disabled, can't use their hands a lot, it's especially important that we have some kind of alternative. And because we tend to take a long time to eat our vegetables because we can't chop them up every day, this is a good alternative. And because a lot of us with chronic conditions have really, really terrible gut biomes at this point, either because small fiber neuropathy actually tears up the tissue in the body, including gut tissue, or just because since we can't move around real well, we have less chance of getting a good diet right now. So this is a really good option to have around. And then once this is ready, you're just going to stick it in the fridge. And in fact, you could stick it in the fridge right now if you want it slow ferment. But as it is right now, this will take a pretty good solid week. Like I said, I sprinkled some ginger in there because I was not seeing, short of having a pound scale, I didn't really have a way to for sure know the salt level. This one's on the saltier side. The other one is on the less salty side. But if you're going to add seasonings in there, if you want it spicy, if you want to put bell peppers in there, If you want to put the coriander in there and have it be a more Euro-Asian style, you can do that at about this stage. Okay, so just when you're putting it all together. So what I'm going to do, I'll cut that other cabbage later, but you'll notice this Napa cabbage is going to be combined with this green head cabbage, and that's just going to give it some more options. If you don't like more options and you want to use straight cabbage one kind, that's fine. Napa cabbage is a lot thinner, so it's going to ferment faster for you. If you use a red cabbage, it's going to stay crunchier. If you mix it into the green's going to go faster for you. And just think about it just like you're cooking it. When you cook red cabbage, it takes a lot longer than if you cook green cabbage. You can also add apples to this. I bet you could also add pears. I have some really good pears from a friend, but they're so good I don't want to waste them in a fermentation. So I'm just going to eat them. But that's how you would do this. And all we're going to do, I'll show you how I salt this. Now, because I have been in food for a long time and I know the ratios real well and food talks to me pretty readily, I am going to just eyeball this. Bear in mind that you can check for your ratios. I would recommend looking at a few recipes. I'm just trying to fill in where I don't feel like the recipes are really helping us. This right here is, this is like a big teaspoon that I would eat out of. What's in here is about a measured teaspoon of salt. I'm just going to sprinkle that in there and about a third more. And then, so what they tell you to do, disabled folks who are not going to do this, is they tell you to go in here and start working it. But they want you to work it for like 5 or 10 minutes. And like, I just absolutely cannot do that. I can do this at most for about 20 seconds at a time, just because I'm trying to show off and show you what I'm doing. And what it's going to do is start creating this juice. That salt is going to start pulling out the juice from the cell walls and interacting with those cell walls and starting to break them down, which is handy, and you're going to need to do that. But you are going to start getting a shine on it pretty quick, even though there's no liquid in here, and there was no liquid on my hands. I don't know if you can tell, but that's real shiny. My hands are shiny now. The cabbage is already shiny. But all I have to really do is let this sit because, nature's smart. It doesn't need a lot of help from me. The other thing I am going to add, though, is I'm going to add some lemon zest. So I'll do that real quick, show you. And even if you don't have a little grater for it, which I apparently don't right now, I thought I did, but I don't, is you're just going to kind of shave it off. Because lemons don't have a lot of pith, you don't have to worry about it getting, bitter. Don't have to worry about bitterness. I'm just going to put about this much in there. Now, this would be a whole lot. If I was just going to end with this amount of cabbage, I would really just put these in, and maybe even just one of these, okay? But I'm going to put both of them in because I have a whole nother cabbage I'm going to put in there, okay? Actually, I'm going to just put 4 pieces. You notice I'm not putting any of the juice in. I'm just going to put that zest in. So you're just going to leave that. I'm going to work it one more time, get some salt on those limes. And this is also where if you want to add some hot stuff, you can. I am going to put in this one, since I didn't make the other ones hot, I think I'm going to put a little bit of red pepper flakes. These are not very hot because I've had these for a while. The ones that I have that are really hot, they live in the freezer. That keeps them hot. But these are kind of throwaway, so I'm just going to put a few of these in here. And these are much more forgiving because if you put too many in there, it won't matter because they're not that hot. Another good idea in here would be some mustard seed. That would be really nice in here too. I don't think I have any, but you might. You could also, technically, you could get away with just putting some mustard in there, some Dijon mustard if you want to. You could also use some beet powder. I would do the beet powder in the standard green cabbage one, not the Napa cabbage one, because you're just kind of mixing places a little too much. It's a little too much fusion, and it could get a little dicey. But you can get raw beet powder a lot of places now, really good quality. And it's real reasonably priced because beets are cheap anyway. So that would be a great idea in here too. If you want something that has like a high beta carotene, high vitamin A content, but you don't have the time to wait for a full red cabbage ferment, or if you're just not like a super big fan of red cabbage, but you like kind of that beet, that more alkaline, kind of smooth and a little bit of sweet flavor in there. So those are good options. I hope that's helpful. You know, as usual, I try not to make videos about shit you can find on YouTube without me. I try to make videos after I've looked at videos on YouTube and not found quite what needs to be on there in terms of information. And also because I'm always trying to figure out what to do about this Independence Day thing that we keep having. And especially because a couple of days ago, my Supreme Court just made like a massive decision that basically demolishes our democracy. And so I have to find new ways to think about July 4th. Also, though, I know some people for whom this is their first Independence Day that they get to celebrate because they have removed themselves from religious situations where they were not allowed to celebrate that. And so I am thinking about them also this year. And knowing that they will have a special time and it will be a special day, even with all of the hypocrisy and weirdness around Independence Day. So I hope these tips help and they help you get through the weirdness that is U.S. Independence Day. Happy fermenting!